Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi Masechet Ketubot. We're up to Perek Chet, Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov and Chana bat Miriam Menuchatam Began Eden. Amen. And Avdi ben Chaim Lechaim v'Refuah Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa Betor Shah Chulei Israel. The Mishnah begins Naflu la Havadim Ushfachot Zikenim. If she inherited old slaves or old maidservants who cannot do much work, and the husband wants to sell them and use the money to buy something that will generate more profit for him, Yimachru, they may be sold by the husband even against her will. The wife also has the right to sell them even against the will of the husband. Vilakach ben karka v'ochel perot, and land is bought with them that is given to her, and he eats the produce of the land. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, however, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, Lo timkor mipnei shen shevach betavia. She can force them not to sell them because she can claim that they represent the glory of her father's house. Although they are old now, they still demonstrate the wealth and prestige of her family. And the Rav does tell us, V'ilchet hakavateh halacha follows the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. A similar dispute, naflu lah zetim ukfanim zekenim. If she inherited old olive trees or old grapevines that do not produce much fruit, yimachu le'etzim, they may be sold as firewood by the husband even against the wife's will. V'lakach ben karka v'ochel perot, and land is bought with them that is given to her, and he eats the produce of the land. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, however, Rabbi Yehuda says, Lo timkom mipnei shen shevach betavia. She can force him not to sell them because she can claim that they represent the glory of her father's house. And the Rav does tell us, Vilchet hakavateh halacha does follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah teaches the law in a case where the husband spent money on improving his wife's property. For instance, he plowed or fertilized her field, hoping to increase its productivity. If one spent money on his wife's property and then divorced her, whether he spent a lot of money and ate just a small amount of produce, meaning he spent more than the land produced, or he spent a small amount of money and ate a lot of produce, meaning the land produced more than he spent, what he spent, and what he ate. Meaning, where he spent more than the land produced, he must suffer the loss and cannot claim any compensation from her. And likewise, where the land produced more than he spent, he takes all the profit and does not have to give anything to her. Now, although he is unable to claim compensation in the event of a loss, that is true only where he ate at least some of the produce. By enjoying some benefit from the land, he shows that he invested in it for the sake of his personal gain. So he is like a person that spends money on his own property who accepts the risk of losing everything he put into it. However, if he did not eat any of the produce, the law is different. If he spent money on the property but did not eat any of its produce and then he divorced her, he may swear as to how much he spent and take that amount from her as compensation. Since he did not benefit himself at all but only benefited his wife by improving her land, he has the right to be compensated. However, she pays him no more than the value of the improvement to her land. And when the Mishnah says that she pays him what he spent, it refers to a case where his expenses were less than or the same as the value of the improvement. If the expenses were greater than the improvement, she has to pay only for the improvement, and he loses the difference. The husband may be compared to someone who makes improvements to someone else's property without being asked. There too, the owner pays him either the amount of his expenses or the value of the improvement, whichever is less. And that is an abotai of Mishnah Hey. Now in Mishnah 1, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel disagree regarding a woman who acquired property during Erusin. Bet Shammai permitted her to sell it during Erusin because her husband does not yet have the right to eat its produce, but Bet Hillel forbid her to do so because she thereby prevents him from taking its produce in the future after Nisuin. The following Mishnah, which also appears in Masechet Yevamot chapter 4, Mishnah 3, discusses this matter in the context of a Yivamah. If a Yivamah acquires property, the Yavam has the right to eat its produce after he marries her with Yibum, just like any other husband does after Nisuin. The Mishnah here, Mishnah Vav. The Mishnah here, Mishnah Vav, states the law where a Yivamah acquires property and wants to sell it before Yibum. Shomeret Yavam shenaflu la nechasim. If a woman awaiting Yibum inherited property, Modim Bet Shammai Bet Hillel shemocheret v'notenet v'kayam. Right? Shemocheret v'notenet v'kayam. Bet Shammai Bet Hillel agree that she may sell or give it away while awaiting Yibum, and the transaction stands. Before Yibum or Chalitza, the Yavama is, so to speak, attached to the Yavam in the sense that she may marry only him and not anyone else. However, this attachment or Yibum bond is not strong enough for the Yavam to prevent her from selling property she inherited while awaiting Yibum. Although Bet Hillel forbidden Awusa to sell her property in Mishnah 1, they allow a Yavama to do so because the Yibum bond is weaker than the bond between a couple during Erusin. And there are two reasons for this. A, the penalty for cohabitation, sleeping between an Arusa and a man other than her husband is death. Whereas the penalty for cohabitation between a Yavama and a man other than her Yavam is only Malkut, lashes. And B, a man who performs Erusin certainly intends to marry the woman, whereas the Yavam might decide to perform Chalitza rather than Yibum. Now we have learned that the laws of marriage involve several financial arrangements, some of which are recorded in the Ketubot document and some of which are not recorded. A, the Ketubot document includes 3 items. The standard obligation of 100 or 200 zuz, any sum that the husband adds to this amount, and the assessed value of the tzon barzil property brought into the marriage, which he must pay her should he divorce her or die before her. B, not included in the Ketubah document is the wife's malog property, which belongs to her, but which the husband may use. When a wife dies, her husband inherits or keeps all of these monies and properties. The Mishnah discusses what happens to them in the case where Yavama died while awaiting Yibum. Meta, if a woman awaiting Yibum died, Maya Subich Tubata, what should they do with her Ketubah, the 100 or 200 zuz, any amount added by the deceased husband, and the value of the Tzom Barzil property, and what should they do with the property that enters and leaves the marriage with her, meaning the Malog property? Do they go to the Yavam, or does her family inherit them from her? The opinion of Bet Shammai, who address only the second question, what to do with the Malog property, is as follows. Bet Shammai say, Yachleku Yoshea Balim Yoshea Av. The heirs of the husband, meaning his brother, the Yavam, divide the Malog properties with the heirs of the woman's father. This is because we are not sure whether the Yavam has rights to his property as though he had married the Yavama, in which case they would go to him, or whether he does not have such rights, in which case they would go to her family. Since Bet Shammai are uncertain who inherits her, they rule that both sides, the Yavam and the father of the Yavama or his heirs, divide the Malog property equally. If an unmarried woman or even a betrothed woman, an arusa, dies, her property is inherited by members of her own family, such as her father or his heirs, or her own children if she has any. But a wife who dies after she is fully married, Nisuin, is inherited by her husband. Bet Shammai are unsure whether the bond between the Yavam and the Yavama is like Nisuin or not. Therefore, they ruled that her property is divided between the two sides. At any rate, we see here that Bet Shammai consider it at least possible that the Yavam has some rights to the Yavama's property like a regular couple after Nisuin. This ruling does not seem consistent with the first part of this Mishnah, where Bet Shammai themselves said that the Yavama may sell her property, which implies that she has full control over it. So one solution is that the entire second part of the Mishnah refers to a case where the Yavam had performed Ma'amar with the Yavama. Before Yibum, the Yavam and the Yavama are rabbinically required to perform a type of betrothal that is called Ma'amar. Bet Shammai's doubt is whether the Ma'amar, together with the biblical Yibum bond, gives the Yavam rights to the Yavama's property as though they were fully married. Before Ma'amar, however, he certainly does not have any such rights, and she may do with the properties as she wishes. This is how the Tosfot Yom Tov explains the Mishnah over there in Yevamot, chapter 4, Mishnah 3. Now, the opinion of Bet Hillel, who addressed both questions, what should be done with the Ketubah and Tzon Barzil property, as well as what should be done with the Malog property, is as follows. Bet Hillel umrim, but Bet Hillel say, Nechasim b'cheskatan. The Tzon Barzil property remains under its previous status. Now, Bet Hillel do not clarify whether the previous status is that of belonging to the husband, because he had taken a degree of ownership over them by guaranteeing their value, or whether their previous status is that of belonging to the Yavama, since she brought the property into the marriage. If their previous status was of belonging to the husband, they now go to his heirs, the Avam. If it was of belonging to the woman, then they now go to her heirs, her father, and his heirs. Since Bet Hillel do not specify either way, the practical ruling the Rav says over there in Yevamot chapter 4 Mishnah 3 is that the two sides divide this property. Uchtuba becheskat Yoshea Abal, the Ketubot, the 100 or 200 zuz, and any added amount remains under its previous state of belonging to the husband's heirs, since she never had any claim to that money. A woman has no right to these Ketubah payments until her marriage ends, either through divorce or the death of her husband. Although the Yevama's husband died, since she is bound to his brother for Yibum, she does not yet have a right to collect the Ketubah. And Bet Shammai agree with these two rulings. They argue only with regard to Malog property. The property that enters and leaves the marriage with her, the Malog property, is not divided as Beit Shammai said, but remains under its previous status of belonging to her father's heirs, because Beit Hillel hold that the Yavam certainly does not have rights to the Yavama's property. A wife is certainly the owner of her own Malog property. The only question is whether the Yavam's bond together with the Ma'amah was strong enough to make him an heir to her, as though they were fully married. Beit Hillel ruled that it is definitely not strong enough to make him as if he had been fully married to her. Therefore, the Yavam is surely not her heir, rather her father's family are her heirs. Beit Shammai are uncertain about this, therefore they are unsure who inherits her Malog property. Her father's heirs are her Yavam. So according to Beit Shammai, they divide the Malog properties. And that is an abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.